Hey everyone, and welcome to the January edition of the WinUI Community Call. So if you're new to the Community Call, this is a monthly call we have on the third Wednesday of every month at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So our next call will be February 16th. If you'd like to reach out to us on GitHub or Twitter, we have those links posted there. Let's see. So our call today, if you're new to the call, we'll give you a bit of an update about what WinUI is, and then we'll share what WinUI 3 and WinApp SDK will look like post WinApp SDK 1.0. We have a guest on today to chat about Axe automated accessibility testing in WinUI 2, and then we also have some updates in the WinUI 3 controls gallery that we'd like to share. And as always, we'll leave some open time for Q&A that we've gathered from our GitHub and that you're asking live here in the YouTube chat. Sweet. So what is WinUI? So WinUI is the native UI platform for Windows 10 and Windows 11. It's built for today's modern hardware and devices, offering the latest Fluent styling. You can use it to build rich .NET and C++ apps for modern Windows devices. It powers the Windows and Xbox shell and many apps, plus platforms like .NET MAUI and React Native for Windows. WinUI 2 is the second generation of the native UX stack in Windows, built for UWP apps. It consists of the Scene Graph layer and XAML framework in the OS, and a library of Fluent-based controls and styles that updates about trimesterly. WinUI 3 is a new third generation of the native UX stack in Windows. It consolidates the UX technologies previously built into Windows into a single decoupled framework that ships as part of the Windows App SDK, and it is now going to be what we focus on. Let's see. All right, so I wanted to give a bit of an update of our Windows App SDK release channels. We've presented a bit about this in the past, but now that we're post 1.0, I'd like to give some more of an update. So we have three channels in the Windows App SDK, Stable, Preview, and Experimental. And the Stable channel, it's intended for supported stable APIs and features for use in production apps. We won't release this any greater than more than 4 months, but we will service these stable releases. So our last release was Windows App SDK in November, and our next release will be a 1.0 servicing that will come up soon. The second channel is our preview channel. So this is a preview of the next stable release and is tied to the stable release features. We're targeting these about monthly, but we haven't yet had one for 1.0. The last release was for 1.0 in October, and our next preview will be determined a bit closer to our 1.1 stable release. Our third channel is the experimental channel. So these are for features that are in early stages of development. These are not guaranteed to be released, and they may be removed from the next release. These we're also targeting about monthly. Our last release was back in August, and we're still working on when our 1.1 experimental will be released. Great. Woo. Okay. So as I mentioned, in November, we had our Windows App SDK 1.0, which had new WinUI 3 features, including the latest 2.x capabilities. So then we have in the early 2022 through about mid-2022, we'll have some more releases. So we'll have the Windows App SDK servicing release I mentioned that includes critical bug fixes and more stabilization for 1.0. We'll also add in a release for WinUI 2, which is WinUI 2.8, which will include WebView 2 and additional accessibility bug fixes. We'll also have an experimental Windows App SDK 1.1 and a stable Windows App SDK 1.1 with additional new features, and some of these new features will be new to WinUI and will be shipping in 1.1. We also, down in Q3 of 2022, we're thinking about having a Windows App SDK 1.2. 1 second. Okay. So for a little bit more info about what's going to be in Windows App SDK 1.1 for WinUI 3, we're planning on having Mica, background acrylic, IntelliSense hot reload and XAML tooling for unpackaged apps, supporting multiple top-level windows on the same thread, and then the additional bug fixes and stabilization from 1.0. We'll continue to update our WinUI 3 roadmap at this aka.ms link listed here. This is the same doc that you see in our GitHub repo. Sweet. So first, I'll introduce Greg and Dilip to share updates about the WinUI 3 controls gallery. Greg is a PM working on the WinUI team, and Dilip is a software engineer working on the WinUI team. Let's see, 1 second, Greg. Let you come through. All right, Greg, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabby. And thank you all for being here. We're super excited, Dilip and I, to show you some of the changes and updates that were brought to the WinUI 3 controls gallery. And so before we actually talk about some of the changes, I want to spend a few seconds to actually talk about what the WinUI 3 controls gallery is, in case some of you may not be familiar with it. So it's a WinUI 3 application that shows you all of the WinUI controls in an interactive way. So it's an application that you can download from the store. You can follow the link that's below, so aka.ms/WinUI3/gallery. And so you can access it from here. It's 100% open source, so you can have access to the files on our public GitHub repo and file bugs there. And it's a very helpful application if you want to create Windows applications. It shows you all of the different controls. You know, if you're not sure about how to use a specific control, you can see it in the application. We have a lot of examples and templates that you can use. You can also copy the code there and kind of interact with it. So it's like a giant, interactive library of all of the WinUI 3 controls. So Gabby, if you can skip to the next slide. Well, we're now going to walk you through some of the exciting changes that were brought to this new update of the WinUI 3 controls gallery. The first thing that I want to highlight, of course, is that it's now using the WinApp SDK 1.0 release, so that's super cool. But we also have some additional changes that we want to highlight. The first one being some of the UI improvements. We introduced a brand new, fresh, new design that's more modern and sleek. We hope that you'll appreciate it. You'll notice that the controls look different, the control pages look different as well, and we try to make it more user-friendly overall. The second thing that I want to highlight is some of the new / updated controls that we've added to this year's update. We've added more than 11 new controls to this new update. That includes controls such as the expander control, the info bar control that Dilip will then walk you through in our live demo. And we also have updated controls, which is really nice. So we have more than 9 updated controls this time. And speaking of updated controls, I can walk you through the third point, which is the additional API samples. So this is something we're really proud of because we try to include as many templates and examples as possible, and it's important for us to add on to the existing templates as time goes on. So we want to make sure that you get a full grasp of how to use each and every control. So we've added some additional samples for you to play around with. So that includes, for instance, the password box control that Dilip will then show you. So with that in mind, I can actually pass it over to Dilip, who has a live demo of the new WinUI 3 controls gallery.
Super, thanks Greg. Let's see.
Thanks, Greg. Let me share my screen real quick. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly demo the updated WinUI 3 controls gallery and some of the changes that Greg mentioned. So as you launch the app right away, you can see that we have like newer, cleaner visuals for our individual item pages. Our lists of recently added samples and recently updated samples have been refreshed, and navigation view now utilizes the hierarchy functionality. So diving right in, let me show you some recently added controls to the gallery. So first, we have an example of the expander control, which is for showing relevant content. As you can see, we can play around with expand direction and play around with the control and see how we have API samples that show us how we can utilize this control. Another added control is the info bar. So this example of the info bar control we have is used to inform the user of changed application state. So this provides a great way to play around with this control. So we can change the severity states and see all the functionality we have access to. And finally, I want to just point out the password box and the new reveal functionality that we also now have an example of. This example is complete with a new API sample that hopefully makes it clear on how to use this functionality. And so these are just some quick 3 updates that we made, but we have a lot more that you can see and explore. So I encourage everybody to check out all the new content that we have. So this was just a quick demo of the new controls gallery, and I'll hand control back to Greg.
Awesome. Thanks, Dilip. Let me reshare the PowerPoint. One second. Super.
Awesome. Thank you, Dilip. Yeah, we're super excited about some of these changes. I also want to walk you through some of the upcoming changes, so some of the things we plan on working on, especially in terms of the GitHub repo. We have some upcoming structural changes that we quickly want to highlight. So as you may know, right now, the main branch of our public repo is the WinUI 2 controls gallery, also known as the XAML controls gallery. And we also have a separate branch for the WinUI 3 controls gallery. So, you know, those 2 different apps, one uses WinUI 2, the other one uses WinUI 3. And so moving forward, we really want to double down on our investment on the WinApp SDK. So we want to make sure that we put the WinUI 3 controls gallery as the main branch, and then we will create a separate branch to host the WinUI 2 controls gallery. So just all in all, the order of the branches will change. The code itself won't. We just want to, you know, highlight that to be sure that you're aware of the change. We also want to highlight the fact that the code for the current update of the WinUI 3 controls gallery is not available yet. We plan on publishing it on GitHub in the next few weeks, but of course, we still welcome your feedback. If you have any problems or any feature requests, if you find any bugs, we definitely welcome your feedback, and feel free to file an issue on our public GitHub repo or to start a discussion there. We'd be more than happy to help out and to see how we can, you know, ameliorate this version even more. So feel free to access the WinUI 3 controls gallery by using this link, and you can also access the GitHub repo through there. We look forward to seeing you there.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. It's really cool to see all the updates coming to the WinUI 3 controls gallery. Great. And so our next demo will be joined by Marcel, who is a software developer and open source communicator, has been on the call before as a common contributor to WinUI. So it's great to have him on. Let's see, Marcel, do you want to tell us about Axe testing?
Yes, thank you, Gabby. Recently, we added automated Axe tests to WinUI. But first of all, what is Axe? Axe is an automated accessibility testing engine that was initially developed by DEC with an open source set of accessibility tools. Axe itself is available for many different platforms. In our case, we're using Axe Windows, which is specifically designed to test Windows apps and which is maintained and developed by Microsoft. Axe Windows itself is written framework agnostic, meaning you can use it to scan pretty much any Windows app regardless of the technology that was used to build the app. This is also the reason why Accessibility Insights for Windows is also powered by Axe Windows. For those unfamiliar with Accessibility Insights is a tool that developers can use to scan and investigate apps for accessibility issues. And you could use it to also find out how you can improve the accessibility of your app. Since we already used Accessibility Insights to manually check the WinUI controls for accessibility issues, adding Axe tests allowed us to automate testing more and simplified accessibility testing. All right, Gabby, could you switch to the next slide, please? Yeah, right. We already used Accessibility Insights, and we wanted to automate the process. Adding X allowed us to automate the testing fairly easy, and it also simplified the testing infrastructure we need because it removed a lot of manual steps that we had. Since the X tests also run as part of the CI, it also reduces the level of manual validation required for the controls. This also means that issues can be found a lot earlier and a lot easier, since adding a new X test is simple, as we'll later see in the pre-recorded demo. With the X test now being tightly integrated into the testing infrastructure of WinUI, this also means that accessibility testing has been raised to the same level as the existing API and interaction tests WinUI has. While X itself cannot catch all accessibility issues, for example, faulty contrast ratios, which is still something we need to check, X helps us to catch issues that someone with assistive technology would encounter. That can be a missing automation name, wrong automation pattern, or just a faulty control automation structure. And with this, let's go to our demo and see how one can add a new X test to WinUI. Yeah. We will start by writing a new X test case for the split button control. For this, we need two components: a test page with a test UI to run the test on, and an interaction test opening the page and running X against it. We'll first write our test UI. I already prepared a new blank test page for this. The first thing we want to test is whether a split button with an icon as content is accessible. In our case, we will use the symbol icon font color to test this. Is the video not working right now? Then, because I'm still we also want to test whether a split button with a simple text as content is also accessible for users.
Hey, Gabby, it sounds like we may be missing audio from the video.
Thanks. I'm thinking it's streaming out correctly. I just didn't share audio with the Teams call.
All right.
So I'll have, if one of you can take a check on the stream, I will see if everything is a-okay. But I will continue this for now, and then if we do need to restart the video, then I definitely will.
Yeah, it seems like video is working fine. It's time to chat right now.
Super. Okay, great. Thank you for checking.
To make the test page accessible for opening in the interaction test, we will add the X-scan test page attribute and set the name property to split button X. Now let's write our test. For this, we add a new test in the interactions test file for the split button. The test itself will be pretty simple. We will open our test page and scan for accessibility issues using X. Since we add the X-scan test page attribute and set the name to split button X, we can simply create a new test setup helper with the name split button X. The helper will open the test page for us. Once the test setup helper has opened the page, we can then scan the app for accessibility issues by running X against it. We do this using the X test helper that allows us to run X against the open test app. To see our test also working as part of the CI, I prepared a pull request without changes. If we open the checks tab, we'll notice that the CI already ran and had test failures. More specifically, our neatly written X test failed, which indicates that there are accessibility issues with the split button control. Now let's debug our test failure. There are different ways to debug X tests. For example, run the X test and open the test report X creates. In this demo, we will use accessibility insight against our test app and use it to debug what accessibility issues our test page has. For this, we will open the test page using the list of X test pages at the bottom of the test app. On the top left, you can see our test controls. To run accessibility insights on it, we open it, start the UI automation tree mode, and select the app. Gabby, it seems like the video froze, but the audio is still working, so you can see that maybe you can move the mouse around. Oh.
Yeah. Thanks, Marcel. That is very true. Great. Having a couple of technical issues. I will go back because I think we left it about right here. Actually, I think I will just restart from the beginning since we were having some issues all the way through, and I'll check to make sure that it's coming through. Thanks, Marcel, for pointing that out, and apologies all for some of my difficulties with getting the videos going. All right, here we go.
We will start by writing a new X test case for the split button control. For this, we need two components: a test page with a test UI to run the test on, and an interaction test opening the page and running X against it. We'll first write our test UI. I already prepared a new blank test page for this. The first thing we want to test is whether a split button with an icon as content is accessible. In our case, we will use the symbol icon font color to test this. Then, we also want to test whether a split button with a simple text as content is also accessible for users. To make the test page accessible for opening in the interaction test, we will add the xScan test page attribute and set the name property to split button X. Now let's write our test. For this, we add a new test in the interactions test file for the split button. The test itself will be pretty simple. We will open our test page and scan for accessibility issues using X. Since we add the xScan test page attribute and set the name to split button X, we can simply create a new test setup helper with the name split button X. The helper will open the test page for us. Once the test setup helper has opened the page, we can then scan the app for accessibility issues by running X against it. We do this using the X test helper that allows us to run X against the open test app. To see our test also working as part of the CI, I prepared a pull request with our changes. If we open the checks tab, we'll notice that the CI already ran and had test failures. More specifically, our neatly written X test failed, which indicates that there are accessibility issues with the split button control. Now let's debug our test failure. There are different ways to debug X tests.
All right, it looks like we are getting some interesting video behavior. But I'm hoping that you can still hear the audio even though it's kind of freezing in and out. So I'll continue to keep an eye on that. And since there's been some issues, I'll see if I can post this video online as well afterwards to take a look at it if we continue to have these issues.
For example, run the X test and open the test report X creates. In this demo, we will use accessibility insights against our test app and use it to debug what accessibility issues our test page has. For this, we will open the test page using the list of X test pages at the bottom of the test app. On the top left, you can see our test controls. To run accessibility insights on it, we open it, start the UI automation tree mode, and select the app. Now the test ran finished, you can see that there are accessibility issues and accessibility insights to a screenshot of the app entitled the two split buttons. If we look into accessibility insights, we can see that there are two different types of issues. The first one is a missing UI accessibility pattern. The second one is a missing name for one of the split buttons. If we open the second issue and click on the element path, we can see that the first split button on our page is calling this issue. This is because split button cannot automatically determine an automation name based on the symbol icon. While this is not an issue with the split button control, we can fix this by setting the automation properties.name property on our split button control. Now, if you reopen the app, select Accessibility Insights, and scan the app for issues, we can see that the only accessibility issues are the missing expand collapse pattern on the split button control. To fix that issue, we need to modify the automation P of the split button control. As Accessibility Insights correctly indicated, the split button control should also support the expand collapse pattern. For this, we need to update the getPatternCall method to indicate that the split button automation P also supports the expand collapse pattern. Since this is a code behind change, we need to reboot the application for this. Now that the app has started, we can open our test page. Once again, we open Accessibility Insights, open the automation tree, and scan the app for accessibility issues. Since we fixed the accessibility issues with the split button control, Accessibility Insights tells us that there are no accessibility issues on our test page. I've added our fixes to the pull request, and as we can see, the CI ran without any issues. Now we can merge our contribution knowing it is accessibility compliant.
Awesome, it's so cool to see it end to end. And I think we got the video working there at the end, so I'm hoping that everything was able to be seen as it was supposed to be seen. But I'll post a link to this video so you can watch it as well. Let's see. Marcel, I think you had a few more comments to add about access testing in your own app.
Right, yeah. Awesome that your video was working partially.
Yay.
More than I could have hoped for. As we've seen, or maybe not have seen, was that it's fairly simple to add new accessibility tests for WinUI controls. However, writing an accessible app does not only require using controls that are accessible, such as the WinUI controls, but also implement some aspects of accessibility yourself. For example, automation name, as we've seen in the demo. To ensure that your app is accessible, X Windows is a good way to automate accessibility testing. Since it does not require a lot of setup or infrastructure, X is a low-cost way to add automated accessibility validation, especially since you don't need to write manual test cases to navigate through or investigate your entire app using accessibility insights, which can take quite a lot of time. And with that, I would say if you have any questions regarding X testing, feel free to put them in the chat. And with that, I'm handing it over back to you, Gabby.
Awesome. Thanks, Marcel. Let's see. All right, I think I'm going to switch to Q&A. Let me make sure. Yes, it is Q&A time. So I'm going to put us into together mode. If you'd like to all turn your cameras on, then we can see everybody. Let's see, it's taking a couple seconds to load in. 1 second. Running into some. There we go. Let's see, now I can see everybody. Awesome. So Savoy, I'm going to hand it off to you because I think you have quite a gauntlet or quite a big group of questions from our community today.
Yeah, we have a hearty stack of discussion for today. So let me try and stay on top of this as best we can. Let's start with a question for Greg. Greg, I think this might be your first community call with us. Apologies if I'm mistaken, but otherwise, yeah, awesome. Welcome. Well, we're excited to have you. So let me start with you. We'll throw you this one here from Robert, who's asking. I'll also combine it with a question from Sina, who's asking, what is this XAML controls gallery? And Robert adds, are there plans to provide overview and tutorials based on XAML controls?
Yeah, so to answer the first question, so the WinUI 3 controls gallery is an interactive library of all the WinUI 3 controls. So you can, see all the different controls, interact with them, play with them. You also have some code snippets there. So it's all there for you to kind of play around with, use. You can access this application by just, searching for it in the store, or you can go to this link, so aka.ms/WinUI3/gallery, and you'll have a quick link to go there. And then to answer your second question, so it was regarding any tutorials I'm not sure, like an overview, right? Something like that.
Yeah, the question was if there are plans to provide overview and tutorials based on the XAML controls.
Right. So yeah, I'm not quite sure if you could expand on what the user meant by overview or tutorials, but if they have like a specific feature request, or if they have an idea of something that we can work on, they can definitely file a bug on the public repo and we can talk more about it. But yeah, I'm not sure if they expanded more on that.
Awesome. Well, I think I can help by saying perhaps the XAML controls gallery is exactly what they're asking for. So feel free to check that out in the Windows Store. And oh man, my browser just froze. Yeah, let us know if there's anything more you'd like to see. We try to have some very healthy docs, so hoping we can have that answered for you. And I'm definitely just stalling for time now while I relaunch my browser. If anyone has a question sheet open, Mike, I think there's a question for you right at the bottom around row 50 that I was going to send your way next. If not, I'll just throw it to the room for someone to jump in if they have a question. They have their sites on.
Talking about think you're talking about shipping a WinUI 3 app outside the Windows Store.
That's the one.
And if not, I'll talk about it anyway. Yeah, you can ship outside the the Windows Store. So you can do a WinUI 3 app as a package app or an unpackaged app. If you do it as a package app, you can use the Windows App Installer to install it. And if you create your app as a package app, which is supported in 1.0 that came out in November, then you can write your own installer for it. You can write it as an MSI or whatever installer you want to use.
Awesome, and my browser's back and just loading here. Sweet, and we're up. So we have a question here from for Ryan from Ginny. Is XAML Islands no longer on the 1.1 list? Oh, I'm just announcing you've answered that in chat already.
I did, yes.
Sweet. Well, I'll just move on then to this question from Neil Object, who's asking, is WinUI supported on UWP and Xbox One? If UWP is, when will WinUI stop supporting UWP if it plans to?
I also answered that in the chat, and in the chat I
You're
put.
so ahead of it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm all over it. I've also put a link in the chat for a good sort of blog post that we released a few months ago on that subject that like goes into more detail about our thinking around WinApp SDK, WinUI, and UWP. So definitely folks should check that link out.
Perfect. All right, Ryan, well, while I have you here, we're seeing a couple questions on the triage status of WinUI. Raphael's asking, is everyone okay? Triage is growing and progress needs to be seen.
Well, I know Raphael's asking, but I think I've seen a lot of activity. There's probably 10 people that you could have attributed that question to, because a lot of folks are trying to figure out what's going on with triage, what's going on with the growth of issues. I don't have a lot to share other than the team is very aware that we've been sort of deluged with issues. I'd say even before we shipped 1.0, we were pretty focused on product and not focused enough on sort of the processes around the product and trying to get those numbers down and trying to be responsive. Definitely I am, and the team is not sort of happy right now with like how that's going. We realize that we have to come up with some more sustainable solution to be able to handle the issues, and we are having active discussions internally to figure out what to do about it. So it's not in a place where we want it to be. We want to be in a situation where we don't have massive issue growth and that people feel like we're being responsive to the issues, and also that there's closure brought to these issues one way or another. So we're going to have some internal discussions. I think that will take some number of weeks because we may have to realign what people are working on or sort of recast how we prioritize maintaining the repo versus a lot of the other things that we prioritize against. So it will take some time for us to sort out how to address that issue, but we're aware of the issue and definitely it's a thing that we want to address. So I really appreciate Raphael and everyone who's asking that question. It's clear that you're looking for a responsiveness and closure on issues that we're not providing, and we need to figure out a way to do that.
Awesome. Miguel, a question for you. I've seen it from Dialect 30th on the repo, and then some guy named Mike here in the YouTube chat asking about any word we can share on a designer for WinUI 3. You might be muted, Miguel.
I know. I'm clicking unmute right now. So there is no designer for Windows App SDK 1.1. However, we are going to reevaluate this decision. Making work the designer for WinUI 3 is a multi-release work. It requires a lot of work in different layers of the platform. It also requires a lot of discussions, but we have several approaches. The first approach is about we can make better the SAML editor so people can write SAML code efficiently. This is orthogonal to the SAML designer, but this is going to help to the developer just to feel more productive when they are creating SAML apps. The second one is about bring some functionality that we have in the SAML Designer, like exporting the style of the control in the SAML Designer. This is something that we also evaluating. It's not going to be in 1.1, but we are evaluating to have it in the future. And the third one is about the designer itself. So there are a lot of opportunity here to improve the developer experience, and we are evaluating everything right now.
Awesome. And I'm just seeing a question from Marv51 on drag and drop support. I imagine that can be bucketed in with the answer you just gave. Is there more you wanted to add for drag and drop, Miguel?
Yeah, I know. I'm aware about the bug. I have discussions about this bug, about drag and drop. There is some scenario where the bug is not working. The drag and drop is not working. It requires some changing that in some in the architecture of some components. It's going to take time just to make that fix it. It's not going to be done in 1.1, so I hope that we can make for the next release.
All right. And I have a question for Scott here from AC. Are there plans to support compiling C++ WinUI 3.0 apps with Clang in the future? I've submitted a proposal for this in late August.
No, we are not in plan to support Clang.
Oh, go ahead, Miguel. Sorry, I think we had Scott on this one.
Scott, go there.
Sure,
Sorry.
sure. Yeah, the point I would make on that, AC, is that C++ WinRT, which is the tool that produces the projection headers for consuming WinUI 3 APIs, should be largely Clang compatible, although I don't believe that we test that regularly in automation. So it's possible we have some breaks. It's also possible that we haven't kept up with the version of Clang that you're using. So so what I would say is, if you run into any issues, then please enter them. I just put the URL on the chat for the issues tab for CPP1RT. If you run into any issues, AC, with Clang compatibility, please enter an issue on the CPP1RT site, and we'll see if we can get that fixed.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Gabby, a question for you. Our cone is saying, I have been seeing a navigation view item behavior in WinApp SDK 1.0 that was not present in Project Reunion 0.8.5. Namely, when an item is underlined, normally in a blue line, the line is being truncated. The expected behavior, I thought, is that for a horizontal nav view, the line beneath the navigation view item should be as long as the displayed text. Anything you can share there?
Yeah, so I think I understand what the question is around. So in Project Reunion 0.8, we hadn't yet added in the new fluent styling that we introduced in WinUI 2.6. That was for Win11. And so in Windows App SDK 1.0, specifically, I believe Preview 2, we ported over the theme resources, the updated stylings, for all of our controls. And so with the switch from 0.8 to 1.0, you'll see those updated controls. And so your app will look a little bit different. It'll be updated, rejuvenated for Windows 11 automatically. So that's a new behavior, or a new visualization in navigation view. So that's expected, but it is different from 0.8.
Awesome. All right, let me throw it over to Mike again here. Mike, Dilek 30th is asking for support on exception diagnosis. For now, they can check the exception message at the output window. However, it is much less efficient than directly looking at the exceptions pop-up window. And they say, not to mention the WinApp SDK 1.0, finding some lines of the exception log large, and the output window is tedious to read through, hoping for better diagnosis support.
Yeah, we are too. The exception messages that come out of WinUI and WinApp SDK, they go into the debug output, but they're not exposed in the exception object like they are in elsewhere in .NET. They're actually they're actually really only exposed to the debugger. You actually have to have debugger privilege in the process to be able to access them. So they get kind of lost amongst all your other messages about all the assemblies that you're loading and threads that are starting and not starting. So they're pretty easy to lose in there. So we're frustrated with that too. And so we're doing some things that we're doing some investigation now to see what we can do to make it better, either get it out of any exception somehow, or in some way make it more visible and discoverable in Visual Studio.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
If I could,
Savoy,
if I could just tack on to what Mike was just saying there, which is certainly a good point that Mike brings up, which is the visibility of the exception SPU in the output tab. There's also the developer experience, the just-in-time, the dialogue that pops up when you encounter an exception that travels across the application binary interface. And that is a known regression in the dev experience from UWP programming. And we're aware of that, and we know that that makes it very difficult. In other words, when you have an exception that's thrown in native code, say in WinUI, and that travels across the ABI to your C# program, then you would hope and expect to have a nice dialog pop up that says, you had an exception, here's a bit of stack, here's a user-friendly sentence that says what you did wrong or what happened. And we know that that's regressed, and that is in the backlog to address that.
Awesome. Thanks a ton, Scott. And while you're here, I was actually going to throw the next question your way anyways. Arcone is asking about plans to address tooling in WinUI 3 for C++/WinRT desktop apps. They're currently using WinApp SDK at 1.0 and is lacking support for XAML element properties. I would love to see a designer and toolbox. I think that is they wrote a lot more detail here. We want to take a look at it later, but I think that's the core question. Or they are asking for suggested workarounds too, if we happen to have them.
Yeah, Miguel touched on this earlier with the XAML designer, and I would make two fundamental distinctions with XAML development amenities in Visual Studio. There are the runtime features like the property editor, the live view, the hot reload, and so on. And those are all functional, although the support matrix is a little complicated and confusing. I'm typing into the chat right now the URL for that describes that support matrix. The upshot is that the latest GA of Visual Studio supports the latest GA of the WinApp SDK. Any other combinations you get a mixture of experience, unfortunately, due to compat issues, breaking changes. So we expect that to settle down, and we'll drive out the remaining issues there for the runtime XAML editing support. As far as the XAML designer goes, that's a little bit more complicated. We're aware of the pain and the take back there, and that has a lot to do with the language that you're using. So if you're using C++ WinRT or C# WinRT, these are standalone libraries that are decoupled from Visual Studio. It used to be that XAML design work was integrated directly into Visual Studio, and it would rewrite your source code and so on. It had deep, intimate knowledge of your source when you were writing in C++ CX, or when C# WinRT support was native to the compiler in the runtime. That's no longer the case, and so we have some catching up to do. We need to refactor some of that XAML design surface, some of that work in order to support these now standalone language projection libraries. So that is in the backlog, but that's going to take a little bit longer for us to get to.
Awesome, thanks, Scott. Greg, I'm seeing some questions here in chat on Pivot, and it sounds like there's some info you wanted to share there.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly make the point that the pivot control was added to the latest update of the WinUI 3 controls gallery. So, we've had a lot of discussions on the public GitHub repo there about this pivot control. So we decided to put it back into the WinUI 3 controls gallery. And I also encourage you to have a look at the navigation view control, which kind of has a more modern feel. And you can feel free to leave us any feedback on the repo there to see how we can make it better.
Awesome, thanks, Greg. Let's see what else we have. The questions are just flying in still. Thanks to everyone listening for contributing the questions, and thanks to the team for being here to keep answering them. Miguel, a question from a user here could you let us know if application window title bar customization will be implemented on Win 10, and if it is, the release that's intended to be included in? The roadmap is too high level for that detail, but it's an important differentiator between WPF by Chrome and WinUI 3.
Okay, let me clarify first the title bar space because it's a little confused. So there are two API sets for handle the title bar, the window title bar. One is at the level of the XAML, and the second one is at the level of app window. App window is a separate component, separate from WinUI 3. It's part of the Windows App SDK, and it was created for work with any kind of UI framework which use HWin underneath. So you can use app window with WPF, Win4, NFC, in addition to WinUI 3. So we have two sets of API, the XAML and the app window. So you can customize the title bar in two ways. So you can create a completely new title bar or modify the style that we have by default, the default style of the system Win32. So to create a new complete title bar, you can use XAML APIs and set up some kind of control as a area where you can drag and drop your window and change also the style for the caption buttons. You can also use the app window as well. So you can create a new title bar with XAML and app window. Both API sets work for Windows 10 and Windows 11. But to modify just the default style that comes with the system, for example, changing the background or the foreground color or the system title bar, you should use the app window API. And this API only works in Windows 11. Unfortunately, there is no plan for make that work for Windows 10 in one by one. You can also go, so the recommendation is you require this kind of customization for Windows 10 as well. So you should go to the full custom title bar or modify the default system title bar using the Win32 APIs, which is not simple, super complex. We are aware about that.
Awesome. And Miguel, there was also a question that was related here. Maybe you already covered it. I just wanted to check in, if not, around, where was that? Here it is, mica and background acrylic for title bar customization. Did you cover that already?
Mica and acrylic is something that is going to happen in Windows App SDK one by one. If you apply a custom title bar, it's going to be there.
Perfect. All right. Question from Mike on WinUI performance. Nicolay is saying that the dependency property seems much slower in WinUI 3. Efficient binding is of absolute importance for them. I think that's the question there is, or if we can comment on that.
The first part was about dependency property. What was the second part about?
I think the question's on performance in general. So they're hoping to see WinUI apps feel snappier, and they're noting that the dependency property seems much slower in WinUI 3 than in WPF.
Yeah, the dependency property thing is something that we're curious about too. I don't have anything new about it. I can talk about performance in general. One of the things that we've done recently, maybe I've commented on this already, is set up some infrastructure so that we are measuring some, can't remember exactly what some scenarios, but some of the top priority scenarios that we're measuring them regularly as part of a pipeline so that we're catching any regressions that come in. So we're not letting things get any worse. We have made some improvements that are currently in the 08 servicing branch. And so we'll be getting those into the 1.0 servicing as well. And they're in the internal 1.1 already. So we'll get those improvements in. We've got some people that are ramping up to look at tooling improvements that we can make with performance and tooling and learning, basically. And we've got some people that are starting up at ramping up, looking at more scenarios to start measuring and identifying where we can make improvements. dependency property is one of those. It's been a concern for a while.
Thanks for jumping in on that, Mike. I think we're getting close to the end of the stack here. A question for Ryan from Az is when around our smooth resizing experience. They're saying that resizing WinUI 3 feels a little jittery, and they'd like to see the it be more like UWP's application frame window, where the resizing is super smooth.
Yeah, and Mike can feel free to jump in and add anything to this. But basically, this is sort of one of the consequences of decoupling from the OS. We've pulled out not only WinUI, but the compositor as well. And so there's a bunch of sort of glue that we had when we were baked right into Windows and trickery that we could do to get the resizing to be super fast and render super quick. And when we decouple from the OS, we lose some of that capability. I believe that our compositor team has some ideas about how this could theoretically be improved in the future. It definitely is worse and probably will be worse for some number of releases, but it's something that I think we eventually want to tackle. But it is sort of one of the downsides and one of the consequences of pulling out the compositor out of the OS. Looks like I answered that well, Mike.
Yep, that was great. Yeah, I think we've spent some time looking at it. We've basically understand the issue, but it's not something that we've started working on yet.
Yeah, it's an annoying thing, but it's not so bad that like we feel an urgency to fix it right now. But yeah, something I think we'd like to get to.
Awesome. And Miguel, a question for you. Jose is asking, can I use native WPF components with WinUI 3 components?
Sorry, say again. Native
WPF components with WinUI 3 components.
No, you can't. You can mix two different UIs right now. This is the work of Samay Islands, where you can have a WPF hosting WinUI 3 or reverse Samay Island, which is something that is really more far away. That which is about WinUI 3 can host WPF component, but right now it's not possible.
Thanks, Miguel. Let's see. I think we have a few last questions rolling in here that I'll give the team a chance to look at. I can handle one that came from me right at the start here. Let me just pull that up so I had it right. Sorry, Neil Object was asking what my favorite bands are, and this was kind of fun. This came from I think the podcast I just did with Windows Wednesday, run by Scott Hansman and Kayla Cinnamon, where sound is part of the Windows stack. From Windows apps, you can call the Play Sound API and access system sounds, and that was something that I helped to do the audio update for as part of Windows 11. And so it's a good question, Niels, because there's definitely like a lot of music that was rolling through my head at the time working in the audio space. But for me, being, I'm very open about being an attention deficit person. I never dwell on one band for long. So really, I just have music playing 24/7, and it's more what's my favorite song of the day. I actually did pull up some of the Spotify playlists I made because we did some group playlists with the team back when we were doing that work. And some of my top songs at the time that we were doing the Windows 11 soundscape were Cotton Candy Lemonade by Blue Tiger, Straight Outta Mumbai by J. Paul, Live Well by Palace, Strange Overtones by David Byrne, Lost by Frank Ocean, and Charmander by Aminé. Although my favorite band at the moment is probably native musician Griffin Washburn, who goes by stage name Goth Babe, and I think my favorite song at the moment is Witches by Alice Phoebe Lou. So I know I just dropped like 10 songs on you. Hopefully that gives you a sense of my taste at the moment. But that's a fun question, so I'll throw it to the rest of the room. Does anyone else have any favorite songs or bands that are just living in their head at the moment? It's kind of fun for our audience to sometimes get a chance to know the team a little bit.
I can say that around the house, I just can't stop singing Rock Lobster by the B-52s. I don't know why. This comes up at least 3 times a day. It's because my son for Christmas got a rock tumbler, which like polishes rocks, and we always yell rock tumbler, and we sing that around the house. So that's stuck in our head.
Love it.
Rock Tumblr.
Anyone else brave enough to jump in with their flavor of the day or month?
Since we've been working from home, the song I hear most, I think, probably is the NPR theme song.
It's good. That's educational.
Give it on in the background, Mike. You keep it on in the background while you work.
It's upstairs.
I will tell you, Saboy, that I listen to music all the time, and all kind of music. It doesn't matter. It's jazz, it could be classical, it could be electronic, rock, heavy. So actually, I change my style depending on my age. So you will have some sense about how many kind of music I really like it.
Yeah, I'm very much like you in that capacity, Miguel. I definitely go through ebbs and flows of favorite genres. What about you, Gabby?
I'm definitely more of an alt rock, and so I think in general, listening to older, like mid 2000s, is where I'm at. So nothing new as of recent.
Perfect.
Definitely a Seattle scene.
It's fitting. I just saw the mic can take on this question from Ironhide. Thanks for giving me a convenient name to refer to you by. They're asking, WinUI 3 running elevated with a run as administrator. Will this make it to 1.1? And how important do we see this feature?
We think it's important. We're working on it now, and it'll be there's a block on it now that pops up. I think it works in some places, but not in other places. And so for consistency, there's a block on it right now. But we're doing work to get it working, hopefully 1.1.
Awesome. And I tried to watch the chat for any questions for our guest, Marcel, who's here with us today. Marcel, I didn't see any come through for you yet, but let me know if I missed any, because I definitely want to give you a chance to participate in the Q&A here.
I don't think there were many or any questions at all regarding X testing. But I think Matt had one question, like if there are plans for Microsoft to make this easier in the future or provide more guidance, but that's not something I can comment on because I'm not Microsoft.
Oh, sorry, what was the question you were calling out there, Marcel?
I think Matt Lacey asked if there are plans to provide more guidance around accessibility testing and stuff like that, and also writing simple tests for WinUI 3, but I think someone already sort of answered that in the chat.
Gotcha. Is there anyone who'd like to take up that question in our forum here?
I can talk about not accessibility, but also I can talk about unit tests in WinUI 3. So we are working with the Visual Studio team to support the full IDE experience for unit tests in BS 2022. I believe that for unit tests in x64 in the 17.1 preview 3 already support the WinUI 3, so they are also working in the ARM64 support. We don't have a template though, but it's more natural and everything is working right now for that. But we didn't announce that. We didn't create any kind of documentation just because it's work in progress, and we are expecting just to create these docs and make the thing easier for developers. But that's for the unit test. I'm not sure about accessibility.
Awesome. Thanks for jumping in on that, Miguel. I think we're right at about the end of the hour here. We had a few questions come in last moment that the team needs a little bit of time on, so we'll save those for the next call. As always, we tried to get to everyone. If we did not get your question answered, please feel free to go drop it on our GitHub. We have a discussion template that you can use for questions, as well as once a month we post our community call for questions, and often you can see answers there as well. Sometimes these questions are just technically deep and we need a little more time to prep answers. So GitHub's a great place for those heavier questions, or again, we can try and save them for next month and get back to you on them. So thanks everyone for tuning in, for chatting with the team and dropping your questions. We always have fun talking to you. Hopefully you had fun getting to know about us, the stuff we work on, and get your questions answered. So I will kick it back to Gabby. And thanks also to our special guest this month, Marcel, for joining us. It was great having you.
Yeah, I think you covered it all. That's what I was going to say. Thanks, guests, for coming on and sharing your latest work. It's great to learn about it all. And thanks all for coming. We're excited to see you next time. And that next call is February 16th. And feel free, as Savoy said, to drop comments and open issues in our GitHub repo in the meantime. We'll see you next time. Bye.